George
Ladies and
Soros
gentlemen, it is
survived
imperative that we
Nazi-occupied
address
Hungary
the
as a
global
teenager,
challenges ahead
14
with
years
unity
old.
and
Death
foresight.
at every corner.
Ladies and gentlemen, it is
Identities were
imperative
fake.
that we
Names
address
were
the global
changed.
challenges
This
ahead
experience
with
shaped
unity
him
and
forever.
foresight.
Decades
Ladies and
later,
gentlemen, it
a
is
single
imperative
trade
that
made
we
him one of
address the
finance's
global
most
challenges
powerful
ahead
men
with unity and
most
foresight.
controversial.
Ladies and
But the real
gentlemen, it
story
is
is far
imperative
more
that we
complex,
address the global
far
challenges
deeper.
ahead
A
with
man
unity
who learned
and
early how
foresight.
systems collapse
Ladies
was
and
later
gentlemen, it is
accused of causing
imperative
them to
that we
collapse.
address the global
Irony?
challenges ahead
Perhaps.
with unity
But
and
let's go back
foresight.
to the beginning.
Ladies and gentlemen, it is
1930,
imperative that we
Budapest.
address the
The
global
second
challenges
child of
ahead
Tivadar
with unity and
Erzsébet
foresight.
Schwartz is born.
Ladies
His
and
name
gentlemen,
is
it is
György.
imperative that
The
we
world will
address
know
the
him
global
as George
challenges ahead
Soros.
with
His
unity
father,
and
Tivadar,
foresight.
was a lawyer who escaped
Ladies and
from a
gentlemen,
Russian
it is
prisoner camp
imperative
in
that we
World War
address
I.
the global
He knew
challenges
what
ahead
survival
with
meant.
unity
He
and
would pass this
foresight.
knowledge to his son.
Ladies and gentlemen, it is
Very
imperative
soon.
that we address the
In
global challenges
1944,
ahead
the
with
Nazis
unity
occupied
and
Hungary.
foresight.
It was a death
Ladies and
sentence
gentlemen,
for
it is
Jews.
imperative that we
Tivadar
address the
arranged
global
false
challenges
identities.
ahead
The family
with unity
scattered.
and foresight.
George
Ladies and
lived as
gentlemen,
the
it is
adopted child
imperative
of a
that we
Christian
address the
government
global
official.
challenges ahead
14
with
years
unity
old.
and foresight.
Every day was
Ladies and
a
gentlemen,
lie.
it is
Every
imperative that
moment
we
was
address the
danger.
global
But
challenges
this
ahead
experience
with
taught him a
unity and
vital
foresight.
lesson. Systems
Ladies and
can
gentlemen, it is
collapse.
imperative
Rules
that
can
we address
change.
the global
Reality
challenges
is
ahead
what people
with
believe it
unity
to
and
be.
foresight.
This insight would
Ladies and
later
gentlemen,
form
it
the
is
foundation of
imperative
his
that we address the
reflexivity
global
theory.
challenges ahead
But
with
this wasn't the
unity and
moment that
foresight.
defined him.
Ladies and
The
gentlemen,
formative
it is
years went
imperative
deeper.
that we address the
In
global
Budapest,
challenges ahead
young
with
George
unity
witnessed the
and
complete
foresight.
breakdown of civilized
Ladies and gentlemen,
society.
it is
He saw
imperative that we
neighbors
address
turn
the
on
global
neighbors,
challenges
friends
ahead
betray
with
friends,
unity and
law
foresight.
become lawlessness,
Ladies and gentlemen,
order
it is
become
imperative
chaos.
that we
The
address
speed
the
of
global
collapse
challenges
shocked him.
ahead
One
with
day,
unity
life
and
was
foresight.
normal. The next,
Ladies and gentlemen,
survival
it is
was everything.
imperative that we
This
address
lesson
the global
embedded itself
challenges
in his
ahead
psyche.
with unity
Nothing
and
is permanent.
foresight.
Everything is
Ladies and gentlemen,
contingent.
it is
Safety
imperative
is an
that we
illusion.
address the global
These weren't
challenges
abstract
ahead
concepts.
with
They
unity
were
and
lived
foresight.
experiences,
Ladies and
burned
gentlemen,
into
it is
memory by
imperative
fear
that we
and
address the
necessity.
global challenges ahead with
In
unity and
1947,
foresight.
he escaped Hungary,
Ladies and gentlemen,
went
it
to
is
London.
imperative that
But
we
escape
address
isn't
the
just
global
physical,
challenges ahead
it's
with
psychological.
unity and
The
foresight.
refugee mentality
Ladies and gentlemen,
never
it is
fully leaves.
imperative
You
that we
remain
address
alert,
the global
watchful,
challenges ahead
ready
with
to
unity
move,
and
ready to
foresight.
adapt.
Ladies and gentlemen,
This
it is
hypervigilance
imperative
would
that
later
we
serve him
address the
well in
global
markets.
challenges ahead with
London was
unity
gray,
and foresight.
cold, unwelcoming.
Ladies and gentlemen,
He
it
had
is
little money,
imperative that we
less
address
English,
the global
no
challenges
connections.
ahead with
But he had
unity and
survived
foresight.
worse, much worse.
Ladies and gentlemen, it
He
is
enrolled at the
imperative
London
that we
School of
address the global
Economics,
challenges
worked
ahead
menial
with
jobs to
unity
pay
and
bills.
foresight.
Railway porter,
Ladies and gentlemen,
restaurant
it is
dishwasher,
imperative
swimming
that
pool
we address
attendant,
the global
manual
challenges
labor by
ahead
day,
with
studies
unity
by
and
night.
foresight.
The double life
Ladies and gentlemen,
continued.
it is
Different
imperative that
stakes,
we address
same
the global
pattern.
challenges ahead
Survival
with
through
unity and
adaptation.
foresight.
Karl Popper
Ladies and
became
gentlemen,
his
it is
intellectual
imperative
mentor.
that we address the
philosophy
global
of
challenges
science,
ahead with
critical
unity and
rationalism,
foresight.
the open society.
Ladies and gentlemen, it is
These weren't
imperative
just
that we
ideas.
address the
They were
global challenges
frameworks for
ahead with
understanding his
unity and
experiences.
foresight.
Why
Ladies and
do
gentlemen, it is
societies fail?
imperative that we
How do
address the
tyrannies
global
rise?
challenges ahead
What makes
with unity
democracy
and
fragile?
foresight.
Popper
Ladies and gentlemen,
provided
it
the
is
theory.
imperative that
Soros
we
had
address
lived
the
the
global
practice.
challenges
The
ahead
combination
with
was
unity
potent.
and foresight.
Intellectual rigor meets existential experience. Abstract philosophy meets concrete survival. This synthesis would define his approach to everything. Markets, philanthropy, politics, life itself. But first, he needed to eat. Philosophy doesn't pay rent. Ideas don't buy food. He needed a profession. Finance chose him more than he chose finance. A fellow Hungarian émigré offered him a trainee position, Singer and Friedlander, a small merchant bank. The pay was minimal, the work was mundane, but it was a start, a foothold, a chance. He took it, grabbed it, made the most of it, because that's what survivors do. In finance, Soros found something unexpected, a laboratory for his philosophical ideas. Markets weren't just about money, they were about human psychology, collective behavior, mass delusions. The same forces that created totalitarianism operated in markets: fear, greed, herd mentality, the desperate need to believe, the refusal to see reality. He recognized the patterns from Budapest, from survival, from Popper. But while others saw markets as rational, efficient, mechanical, Soros saw them as human, fallible, reflexive, prone to bubbles and panics, just like societies. This insight was revolutionary, but revolution takes time. First came apprenticeship, learning the basics: bonds, stocks, currencies, arbitrage, the language of finance, the rhythms of markets, the personalities of traders. He was good at it, very good. Why? Because he understood uncertainty, embraced it. While others sought certainty, stability, predictability, he thrived in chaos, expected it, prepared for it, used it. In 1956, Soviet tanks rolled into Budapest. The Hungarian Revolution crushed. Friends from his youth died in the streets, or fled, or disappeared. He watched from London, powerless, guilty, angry. Survivor's guilt is real, corrosive, transformative. It drives some to destruction, others to achievement. Soros chose achievement. But achievement for what? Money wasn't enough, never would be. The memory of Budapest demanded more. The dead demanded more. Survival demanded purpose. That same year, he moved to New York, America, the Golden Land, the place where refugees became millionaires, where past didn't matter, only future. Another myth, another reality, another chance. He joined FM Mayer, a small arbitrage firm. His specialty became European securities. Why? Information asymmetry. Americans knew nothing about European markets. Europeans knew little about American demand. He stood in the gap, translator, interpreter, arbitrageur, making profits from inefficiency, from ignorance, from the spaces between. Classic refugee behavior. Living in the cracks, thriving in the margins, seeing what others miss, because outsiders always see more clearly. They have to. Survival depends on it. By 1963, he was ready for more, joined Arnhold and S. Bleichroeder, a prestigious firm, better pay, bigger deals, more responsibility, more visibility. He was climbing, slowly, steadily, strategically. But something was missing: independence, control, the ability to act on his convictions, to test his theories, to prove his philosophy in markets, in practice, in real time, with real money, real consequences, real vindication, or real failure. Either way, real. 1969, he convinced his firm to let him start a fund, Double Eagle, $4 million, tiny by Wall Street standards, enormous for a refugee, a beginning, a test, a chance to apply everything he'd learned, from Budapest, from London, from Popper, from markets. The fund was different. While others focused on companies, he focused on countries. While others analyzed earnings, he analyzed governments. While others bet on stocks, he bet on currencies. Macro investing before the term existed, global thinking before globalization, systemic analysis before systems thinking. He was early. Always early. Sometimes too early. But early is better than late. In markets, in life, in history. The 1970s were chaotic: oil crises, inflation, currency fluctuations, political instability. Perfect conditions for his approach. Chaos creates opportunity. Uncertainty creates mispricing. Fear creates bargains. He thrived. The fund grew. Returns compounded. Reputation spread. By 1973, he was ready for the next step. Quantum fund, his own firm, his own rules, his own vision, complete autonomy, total responsibility, ultimate freedom. The name mattered. Quantum mechanics, Heisenberg's uncertainty principle. The observer affects the observed. Measurement changes reality. Perfect metaphor for markets. The quantum fund was more than an investment vehicle. It was a philosophical experiment. Could reflexivity theory generate returns? Could understanding feedback loops create profits? Could seeing the world as it is, not as models claimed, produce wealth? The answer was yes. Spectacular yes. The fund averaged over 30% annual returns. Unheard of. Unsustainable. Impossible. Except it wasn't. It was real, verified, audited, published. The secret wasn't really secret. See reality clearly. Act decisively. Change quickly. Admit mistakes. Learn constantly. Simple rules, difficult execution, because seeing reality clearly is the hardest thing humans do. We prefer our illusions, our beliefs, our hopes, our denials. Soros had no such luxury. Illusions died in Budapest, along with those who held them, but success brought new challenges: visibility, scrutiny, envy, criticism, the refugee who made good, the outsider who beat insiders, the philosopher who profited. The contradictions multiplied. Rich socialist, capitalist critic, market player who questioned markets, wealth creator who criticized wealth, walking paradox, living contradiction, human complexity. The 1980s accelerated everything: deregulation, technology, globalization. Capital flows exploded. Borders became meaningless, at least for money. Information moved instantly. Decisions had to match. The game sped up, stakes rose, volatility increased. Perfect for Soros. He'd been preparing since 1944. Quick decisions under pressure, rapid adaptation to change, comfort with uncertainty. Survival skills became trading skills, the same instincts, different application, higher rewards. Then came 1987, Black Monday. Markets crashed worldwide, panic everywhere. Soros had positioned for volatility, not the crash specifically, but chaos generally. He profited while others panicked, not from schadenfreude, from preparation, from philosophy, from expecting the unexpected, because unexpected is normal, stability is abnormal. History taught him that. Budapest confirmed it, markets proved it, again and again. By 1990, he was managing billions, not millions, billions. The kid who fled Hungary, who washed dishes in London, who started with nothing, now moved markets, influenced governments, shaped outcomes. The reflexivity was real. His trades affected what he traded. His opinions moved opinions. His actions created reactions. He'd become part of the system he analyzed, observer and observed, subject and object, player and game. But the biggest test was coming, the trade that would define him, make him legendary, or destroy him, the British pound, 1992. The setup was perfect, or perfectly flawed, depending on perspective. Britain had joined the European exchange rate mechanism, politically motivated, economically questionable. The pound was overvalued, the economy was weak, interest rates were high, unemployment rising, inflation falling, classic disequilibrium, unsustainable, obvious. To him, governments see what they want to see. Markets eventually see reality. The gap between perception and reality creates opportunity or disaster, depending on positioning. Soros positioned for reality. He studied the numbers, analyzed the politics, understood the constraints. The Bank of England had limited reserves. Germany wouldn't help. Political will was weak. Market pressure was building. The outcome seemed inevitable. To him. But inevitable isn't certain. Markets can stay irrational. Governments can be stubborn. Politics can override economics. For a while. The question was how long? And could he survive until reality arrived? This is where philosophy met practicality, theory met execution, conviction met risk. He built his position carefully, quietly, systematically. $10 billion leveraged against sterling. The biggest bet of his career, of anyone's career. If wrong, devastating. If right, historic. September 16th, 1992, Black Wednesday, or White Wednesday, depending on perspective. The pressure on sterling intensified. Speculators sensed blood. The Bank of England defended, raised rates to 10%, then 12%, then 15%. Spent billions buying pounds, desperate measures, futile measures. The market had decided. Soros had catalyzed, but not created, the fundamental problem. He simply recognized it, positioned for it, profited from it. $1 billion in one day. The man who broke the Bank of England. Headlines worldwide. But he didn't break anything. It was already broken. He just knew when and how and why. The aftermath was complex, hero to some, villain to others, genius or manipulator, patriot or predator. The labels multiplied, the reality blurred. What happened next changed how the world saw him. He became symbol, archetype, bogeyman, sage, everything except human. The conspiracy theories started immediately. Jewish financier destroys Christian nation, international capital. Defeats national sovereignty. Globalist agenda revealed. Ancient prejudices in modern dress. He'd heard it before. Different context. Same hatred. From Nazi propaganda to British tabloids. The continuity was depressing, but predictable. Success plus difference equals suspicion. Always, everywhere, forever. But this wasn't the moment that defined him. The money was just money. The fame, just noise. The real impact came later, in how he used both. Open Society Foundations started small. Scholarships for Black South Africans, support for dissidents in Eastern Europe, promoting democracy, defending human rights, building civil society. The things absent in his youth, the infrastructure of freedom, not charity, investment, in human potential, in social change, in systemic reform. using wealth to create the conditions where others could create wealth, or art, or knowledge, or justice. By the mid-1990s, he was giving away hundreds of millions, more than most billionaires made. Building universities, funding think tanks, supporting independent media, creating networks of reformers, challenging closed societies everywhere. But here's where perception and reality diverged. Critics saw conspiracy, manipulation, control, hidden agenda, world domination, the protocols of the elders of Zion, updated, recycled, weaponized. The reality was messier, less organized, more human. Funding democracy is complicated. Supporting change is controversial. Promoting openness threatens closure. Power resists challenge, always. The backlash was predictable. But its intensity surprised even him. In Russia, his foundations were banned. In Hungary, vilified. In America, demonized. The man promoting democracy became threat to democracy, according to those who feared democracy. The irony wasn't lost, but neither was the danger. Real danger, death threats, security details, armored cars. The refugee fled again, this time from his own success, his own impact, his own symbolism. But he didn't stop funding, didn't stop speaking, didn't stop challenging. If anything, intensified, accelerated, expanded. Age brought urgency, mortality brought purpose, legacy brought responsibility. The clock was ticking, systems were closing, democracy was retreating, time was running out. The 2008 financial crisis vindicated his critique. Markets weren't efficient, they were reflexive. Bubbles weren't aberrations, they were features. Regulation wasn't interference, it was necessity. He'd been saying this for decades. Now everyone listened, briefly, until recovery came. Then amnesia returned, lessons unlearned, patterns repeated, cycles continued. Human nature unchanged. But one thing had changed, his focus, from making money to giving it away, from building wealth to building societies, from personal success to systemic change. The arc was complete, or nearly. In 2011, he returned outside capital, converted to family office. The quantum fund became private. The public career ended. The private mission intensified, free from investors, free from regulations, free from scrutiny. Free to act, to fund, to challenge, to provoke, to fail, to succeed, on his terms. Pause here, because this assumption is wrong. He wasn't retreating, he was advancing, on different fronts, with different weapons, ideas instead of trades, institutions instead of positions, networks instead of portfolios, but the same strategy. See reality clearly, act decisively, change quickly, admit mistakes, learn constantly, the cause is multiplied. Democracy promotion, human rights, criminal justice reform, drug policy, immigration, education, public health, climate change, each connected, each urgent, each controversial, each expensive, each necessary. By 2020, he'd given away over $32 billion, more than most countries' budgets, more than most billionaires' net worth, more than seemed possible. But possible is relative. To someone who survived impossible, the impact was immeasurable, literally. How do you quantify democracy, price freedom, value justice, calculate dignity, measure hope? You don't, you can't. You just fund and hope and continue, despite criticism, despite failure, despite hatred. Because the alternative is surrender, and survivors don't surrender. They adapt, they persist, they endure. They prevail, eventually. The attacks intensified with age, not his age, the age of authoritarianism, rising globally, threatened by his work, his existence, his symbol, his money, his ideas, his example, his refusal to stop. Viktor Orban made him enemy number one. Despite Soros funding his education, Putin banned his organizations, despite promoting Russian democracy. Netanyahu blamed him for everything, despite supporting Israeli causes. Trump tweeted conspiracies, despite shared New York roots. The pattern was global and familiar. Blame the outsider, blame the Jew, blame the intellectual, blame the successful, blame anyone except yourself, your policies, your failures, your corruption. Ancient strategy, modern execution, digital amplification, global coordination, the protocols updated. Again. But something else was happening. Younger generations discovered him. Not the caricature, the philosophy. Reflexivity explained bubbles. Open society explained polarization. His life explained resilience. His giving explained purpose. New audience, new relevance, new hope. The ideas outlasted the attacks. Truth has that quality. Eventually. In 2018, a pipe bomb arrived at his home, the logical conclusion of illogical hatred. Words become actions, rhetoric becomes violence, conspiracy becomes attempt, the circle closes. From Budapest to Bedford, from Nazi threats to MAGA terror, different uniforms, same impulse. But he survived worse, much worse. The bomb failed, like the ideology behind it, based on lies, fueled by fear, destined to fail, because reality wins, eventually, always, given time. The pandemic proved his point about interconnection, about fragility, about collective action, about truth mattering, about systems failing, about preparation, about response, about survival. Everything he'd been saying for decades. Suddenly, obvious to everyone, briefly, markets crashed, governments intervened, borders closed, certainties collapsed. The familiar became foreign, the stable became volatile, the permanent became temporary. Just like Budapest, different scale, same lesson, nothing is guaranteed. At 94, he's still working, still funding, still speaking, still controversial, still misunderstood, still essential. Age hasn't mellowed, wealth hasn't corrupted, success hasn't satisfied, purpose hasn't wavered, because the work isn't done. Democracy still fragile, society still closing, truth still contested, justice still delayed, progress still reversible, the eternal vigilance of the eternal refugee, physical age irrelevant, mental acuity intact, moral clarity sharp, financial resources deployed, philosophical framework proven, by time, by events, by results, by resistance, by persistence. Few people understood what this meant. His legacy isn't money, isn't foundations, isn't theories, isn't controversies. It's example, that individuals matter, that ideas have consequences, that wealth brings responsibility, that survival demands purpose, that outsiders see clearly, that systems can change, that nothing is permanent, that everything is possible. Both creation and destruction, both progress and regress, both opening and closing. The choice is ours, collectively, but influenced individually, by those who act, who risk, who challenge, who persist, despite odds, despite hatred, despite failure, despite age, despite everything. The reflexivity continues. His actions create reactions. His giving generates taking. His opening provokes closing. His success breeds resentment, but also inspiration, also possibility, also hope, in those who see beyond caricature, beyond conspiracy, beyond symbol, to the human, the survivor, the thinker, the actor, the giver, the challenger, the example. Flawed, certainly. Controversial, definitely. Important, undeniably. The market was moving faster than governments. It always does. It always will. Information versus bureaucracy, networks versus hierarchies, speed versus process, adaptation versus rigidity. The asymmetry is structural, permanent, exploitable, by those who see it, understand it, use it, for profit, for change, for both. The distinction matters less than the impact, positive or negative, constructive or destructive, opening or closing. The tools are neutral, the usage isn't. This understanding separated him from typical traders, from pure philanthropists, from ivory academics, from rigid ideologues. He lived between, in the spaces, in the contradictions, in the complexity, where reality lives. Doing nothing would have been safer, always is, for everyone, in every situation. But safety isn't living, it's existing. And existence without purpose, without impact, without meaning, is death. Different form, same result. He chose differently from the beginning, in Budapest, in London, in New York, in history. Once the position was taken, there was no retreat, not from trades, not from causes, not from principles, not from consequences. Commitment matters, conviction counts, courage costs, but pays. Eventually, in ways unexpected, unmeasurable, undeniable, the final accounting isn't finished, can't be. While he lives, while the work continues, while democracy struggles, while societies evolve, while markets function, while ideas matter, while hope exists. But some things are clear. Already, now, forever. He changed finance, changed philanthropy, changed discourse, changed possibilities, for better and worse, for profit and loss, for opening and closing, for progress and reaction. The complexity is the point, the contradiction is the truth, the paradox is the reality. He made billions, but became a symbol of capitalism's excesses and its possibilities, of Jewish achievement and eternal scapegoating, of individual agency and systemic forces, of American dream and global nightmare, depending on perspective, which changes everything, as he always knew, from the beginning, from Budapest, from survival, from philosophy, from experience, from reflection, from action, from consequence, from history, still being written by him, about him, through him, despite him, because of him. The reflexivity continues, the story evolves, the meaning shifts, the impact reverberates, the example persists, the questions remain, the answers change, the reality reflects. The symbol endures, beyond the man, beyond the money, beyond the controversy, beyond the conspiracy, beyond the philosophy, into history, into memory, into lesson, into warning, into inspiration, into whatever we make of it, collectively, reflexively, humanly. From that point on, his name meant more than the man. George Soros. 2 words. Infinite interpretations, infinite projections, infinite fears, infinite hopes. The name became screen. For others' dreams, others' nightmares, others' theories, others' needs, the man became myth, despite himself, because of himself, through living, through surviving, through thinking, through acting, through giving, through being, uncompromisingly, unapologetically, unforgettably human.